Hi, I'm Mark Cleghorn. Welcome to the Photography Academy. Today we're talking setting up for fine art portraiture. As you're seeing behind me here, we've just got a set following a workshop that we did. When I'm setting up a fine art workshop, I've got to have some kind of concept and some themes as well as some projects for the people coming on the workshops to actually really kind of get their grips into and actually know what we're trying to achieve during the course of the session. Remember, fine art photography, it's definitely just down to the mind, your creativity, your style, your design and so on. But we're coming on a workshop, it's my job to make sure that I'm giving you ideas on what we could be kind of conceptualizing in the real world if it's our own project. So this set here specifically, we put into one kind of range of color palette. It's in the greys and the kind of the mid-tone tonality. So whether it's a black and white set or a color set, whether it's muted color, we've always got those kind of color tones running throughout and things. So a color palette for me is essential when we're starting to actually set up the whole look and the feel to a fine art shoot. Then we start to look at the set, and we've got everything from a multiple of backgrounds. In fact, you're seeing a Last Light by Manfrotto event background. It's got kind of an old mastery effect just running here in the background. Then, just because I knew I was going to run out of set, I've got another black pop-up background just on the side to actually disguise the white walls that are behind. That's all to help in the post-production, so I don't have to do a huge amount of work. So pretty much what I shoot in camera is pretty much what I'm going to show off and so on. And then we've got our movable kind of wall in studio here, which is basically a cupboard as well. Just to actually end the set. I do like a three-dimensional room to actually kind of help me start to create the conceptualization of the images and things really. There's nothing wrong with a simple background and subject. I'm okay with that, depends on the style of the shoot of course. But when we're looking at a workshop, as I was saying to you, I need to actually bring some three dimension, and I either need to create that in studio or go out onto a location to actually bring that location home, as it were. So when I talk about three-dimensional, I mean three-dimensional. I'm on about photographing from this direction, from this direction, from this direction, as well as from this direction down. So it's important to think about what is going to be on the floor, as well as actually what is in the background, because obviously I'm looking for an interesting kind of look and feel. So just nipping down to the local carpet showroom, seeing if they've got any offcuts. Black and white checker floor is one of my favorites all the time and things really. But think about the 3-dimension, including from above coming down, so a 360 vision if possible. But of course, because this side is where we're photographing from, it's not like a hotel room where I could actually go behind the sofa and shoot towards here. Behind me is the rubbish. So basically I'm always looking actually the 180 from camera position as well as 180 from above. When I'm setting up for a fine art portrait, I've got to think about the type of lighting whether I'm trying to use. So many photographers opt for just a big light source. I also like a minimal light source, a bit like a stage in a theatre kind of element. So I'll have a big light source. In this case, it's going to be a big opta. It could be from above, it could be from overhead, it could even be flat coming onto the subject, in fact. Depends on the look and feel that we want. But for me, the most interesting light is always coming from behind the subject. In this case, we've got a strip box with some egg crates. That's the kind of the grids on the front coming in from behind here. And then in the top corner as well, on the opposite side, we've also got a small gridded light to create the kind of the look and feel. So for example, if I'm looking to light the whole set, I can either decide to have all 3 lights in operation. So in other words, my key light, my main light source, as well as my separation lights. That will actually give a 3-dimensional set, but it'll most importantly give big light, because I've got big light source, yeah, so it's going to give me big light. However, if I switch this one off and I concentrate just on the backlights, then it's going to give me more of a theatre lighting by design, as it were, because all the light is going to be coming in from behind. But then I've got to be very, very precise on where I'm looking and positioning the models or clients to make sure I've got that perfect look and feel. If you haven't invested into kind of big light sources, you're looking to actually play around, don't be afraid of the modern LED. These are kind of little cheap lights that you can buy in pretty much any auto showroom, spare parts, inspection lights in other words, yeah. And then you've obviously got things that you can buy in the forecourt where you're filling up for fuel, these little lights, you know, 4 or 5 of these around a set can really start to bring things alive. So don't be afraid of buying cheap light sources, but remember when you're trying to mix these in with flash, you're going to have to make sure that you're dragging your shutter speed, in other words using slower shutter speeds, and then obviously you're going to be using the likes of a tripod to maintain the correct exposure and make sure that you're not blurring things out. So when I'm metering the set, I've got to make sure that I'm recording the light that is falling onto the subject. That's the main thing. So if I've got a subject sat on here or laying, and let's say their head is here, I would meter from the face towards that light source, okay? Being aware though, that this light is also spilling onto their face if they're laying down and I'm photographing from here. So if you think about it, if I'm photographing from above and down, so shooting from a step ladder or a step stool, and I've got both of these lights to fire, I'm going to get a really flat lighting. You've got to be aware of it. Not forgetting, there might be another light like we see in the top corner coming onto the same subject. And whereas it might look great when you're just doing your test shots, when you're doing look at the one light and setting off another light and so on, often when you're using more than one light, it's going to completely confuse the set when you start to actually change your viewpoint as well. So for instance, for more drama here, I'd probably switch off both of these lights to then meter towards here to get a big light source and a big soft light. I'm going to shoot with that to begin with, but then possibly I'm going to switch this one off and meter for this light to give me a little bit more structure, a controlled light source, a smaller light source. And remember, by design, a smaller light source will create more drama naturally within a photograph, no matter what. And of course, we've got to meter these as we go. So as far as the general setup is concerned, if I'm shooting here and my working aperture wants to be 5.6, then I would meter from here to this flash, making sure that I power up the flash or power down the flash to give me my reading on the meter of 5.6. When I'm setting up my separation lights though, these are going to be one stop less, so they would be metered individually for f4. If I don't individually meter the lights, we're going to have exposure contamination, and basically you're never really going to understand what each light is doing within the scene itself. Lastly, when we're looking at the light source, we've got to decide on how soft a light we're going to use. Remember, when you point anything at a subject, you're naturally going to get more specularity, more deep shadow as it falls off quickly. If we want to make even a bare bulb soft, we let it get bigger and bigger, bounce it off soft elements like walls or flats. But when we want to make a softbox softer by its design, we use feathering technique. So as I'm here now, it's pointing directly at me. Okay, so this is a directional light source. If I wanted to feather though, I would just turn this light source as it is, in this case, down, and then the subject would be in a feather of the light. So in other words, they're being lit by this edge of the light where most of the power of the light is going down here. They're going to be lit by this edge and by the reflected edge on the opposite side coming back in towards here. I'm using an octa, but by design a rectangle softbox or a square softbox gives a slightly better feathering of the light as far as it has the angles of the softbox sides to bounce back into position, specifically if we're using big family groups and so on. But in this case, big pool of light, softness as far as the feather's concerned, or a little bit more direction to create a little bit more shadow over there. Now remember, when you light towards the subject as we're doing here now, it's also going to bring extra illumination to the background, and that's what you might not want. Hope you've enjoyed the short film on setting up for fine art photography.